Mr. Bullard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Acting Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Booker, and members of the committee. I'm Bill Bullard, CEO of RCAF USA, which is the largest producer-only trade association representing the U.S. cattle industry. We represent only the farmers and ranchers who raise and sell live cattle. Along with our thousands of cattle-producing members, we also represent America's sheep producers, and thus we represent the backbone of U.S. agriculture, as the U.S. cattle industry alone is the largest segment of American agriculture. Our U.S. cattle and sheep ranchers are the last bastion of independently owned family-scale livestock grazers and feeders in America. But for decades, our ranchers have been dropping like flies, hollowing out rural communities across America, and our ranching industry is being decimated by a combination of unrestrained globalism and market concentration. In just over a generation, over half our nation's cattle farmers and ranchers and nearly 2/3 of our commercial sheep ranchers have ceased operations. Our breeding cattle and sheep inventories declined by 9.2 and 7.6 million head respectively, relegating our cattle herd to the smallest size in 7 decades, and our sheep herd to the smallest size in history. And our family-scale feedlot operations declined by over 75%. Last year, over 73% of all the lamb consumed in America and 22% of the beef consumed in America was imported, indicating that the U.S. is fast becoming dependent on foreign supply chains for its important beef and lamb. All of this even though our U.S. population had increased 49% during the same period, and both domestic beef and lamb consumption has increased significantly over the past decade. The cattle and sheep industries are in crisis because the packing industry was granted a decades-long de facto deregulation for both antitrust laws and the Packers and Stockyards Act. As a result, ranchers have remained unprotected from both monopolistic marketplace harm and harm from unfair and anti-competitive buying practices of the highly concentrated meatpacking sector that wields tremendous buying and selling power to the detriment of both ranchers and consumers. This de facto regulation caused such explosive growth in beef packing concentration that the U.S. Department of Agriculture stated in 2000 that no other manufacturing industry shows as dramatic an increase since the U.S. Census Bureau began regularly publishing concentration data in 1947. In 1980, the four largest packers controlled 36% of the fed cattle market. Today, they control approximately 80%, and they have done so for nearly 2 decades. This is the market that monetizes the entire U.S. live cattle industry, from the cow-calf sector to the feedlot sector. And this de facto deregulation of the marketplace has created a dangerous bottleneck, and think of the shape of an hourglass, in the center of the beef supply chain, where the cattle industry ends and the beef industry begins. And given their gatekeeper status and inherent market power, they are powerful oligopolists capable of exerting abusive market power upstream into the cattle supply chain to reduce cattle prices paid to producers, and downstream in the beef supply chain to increase consumer beef prices. The beef packers have all but eliminated competitive market forces within our industry, and they've replaced them with corporate control. A chart in my written testimony illustrates the effects of market power pervading the beef supply chain, showing a broken market that caused consumers to pay ever-increasing beef prices while cattle prices were falling, a phenomenon that cannot be explained by competitive market fundamentals, particularly when one considers the only ingredient of beef is cattle. And no one looking at this chart can say our cattle and beef markets are functioning fine. Ranchers at one end of the supply chain and consumers at the other are being exploited. An example of how the beef packers leverage down their cattle prices is that ranchers can sell cattle from 4 different baskets, each with their own incremental variations. However, only one of those 4 baskets control the base price for all cattle. That basket is the cash market. And the packers have shifted large volumes of cattle out of that basket into another, leaving the cash market ultra thin and highly susceptible to manipulation. And what this means is the beef packers can now lower the price of all of their cattle from all 4 baskets by manipulating simply the ultra thin cash market, which now stands at about 18%. Our cattle and sheep markets are fundamentally broken, and we ask Congress for its intervention to begin rigorous enforcement of our U.S. antitrust laws and to follow through with the Packers and Stockyards rulemaking that began with the previous administration. We need the enactment of the American Beef Labeling Act to restore mandatory country of origin labeling in the beef market to provide transparency for both producers and consumers. And Chairman and Acting Chairman, we fully support your OFF Act that reforms the broken beef checkoff program. With that, I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.